As I've shifted from creativity to content, like that being the most important thing, like what's the content, like what's happening, and showing it in a way that is meaningful to my clients. Interestingly, it's opened up this entire new avenue of creativity for me.
So let's go. And so for those of you who are listening, I don't know how much of this we'll leave in, but Otto lives in Mexico. As you know, we just lost power again. There's a big rainstorm. He lost power. And when that happens, all internet goes out. So we may get Otto back here in 5 minutes or in 5 days. We don't know. So he'll join us if he can. But Erik, tell me a little bit. I know we've talked earlier about your personal growth, and you've had quite the year and a half in your life, right? Like where you've had some tough times, but you've also seen some amazing gains personally and in your business. Tell us a little bit about you.
Okay. That's it. Okay. Yeah. That's a big one right off the bat, huh? Just the whole thing. Just go.
Yep. I'm going.
Look, the line of demarcation, I think that you are alluding to was my divorce. That was not last August, but the one before. So August of 22. That was just, such a huge shift in life. I am, I don't know if you read the bio or not, but I'm the original mom with a camera. That's how I got into photography before digital was even as good as film. This was 2005 or whatever. And so, well, man, I forgot where I was going. What the heck was I saying? Sorry about that.
No, you're saying you're the original mom with a camera. Like that was your life, right? You were taking care of your kids.
Oh yeah, I got it. Sorry. Yeah, so that's it, right? So I was a stay-at-home dad. I had 3 kids. And before I was a photographer, that's how I got into photography. Was rolling around with the kids on the floor. I mean, I fell in love with that form of communication. I mean, I was such a younger person. I didn't know. A lot of this is just me looking back and realizing this is what was happening, right? And so, yeah, I fell in love with the ability to show people what I saw.
How did you get into? If I can interrupt you really quick, how did you get into weddings? And I mean, obviously you grew as a photographer, photographing your kids, but
yeah, that comes in. That's part of the process here. So essentially, when I started shooting my ex-wife's clientele. She does hair. And so she had this built-in clientele. She'd been showing her family photos to her clients all the time. And they were like, who's your photographer? And, and she was just like, oh my God, it's my husband. It's all he does is just, I get home and, the dishes aren't done, but he's got 8,000 new photos that look all the same to me. And, and going through on iPhoto and editing and all this stuff. And anyway, so I started shooting Christmas cards and family photos and whatnot, when I bought a camera and I hated it, and I didn't really know why, because I had no background in photography. I wasn't trained. I didn't, honestly, famously, when we were getting married, she told me she had a friend that shot film at the time, and she's like, hey, my friend, she's going to come shoot the wedding. And it just had never occurred to me. I just was like, oh, that's cool. Then we'll have photos of the event. That's amazing. What a great idea. So again, just no concept of photography as a hobby, as an art form, as a business model, as anything. It's just, here's this cool thing, this toy I have. My initial business was paparazzi pictures. I was going to revolutionize the photography industry. I was going to go to the park and bring families there and have them play together and take photos of them. And they feel like they were just, paparazzi was taking a picture. As we do when we get into something that we really enjoy, you investigate, you find little forums. At the time, forums were big. And I came across a workshop that was the Boutwells and Alt F. These are names that are well past, I think, in the wedding industry. But if you've been in a while, you certainly know. And they've expanded into other genres or areas of photography. But But at the time, I had never seen anything like this. Alt-F was putting, he was doing the anti-bride thing, setting brides on fire and wedding dresses and bout walls. I was looking at their work, and it was just really, really interesting. I remember there's one photo, there's just a couple over here on the side. They were kissing, and then on the far left of the screen is this old cowboy just sitting in a chair, just all really curmudgeon-y. And anyway, and I just was like, wow. I mean, my mind was blown, and so I went to this workshop, and it was all about weddings. It was a wedding workshop, and I had never shot a wedding. I'd never, but I left that workshop and I said, I'm a wedding photographer. This is what I do. I actually got my first wedding. I put my ex-wife in a dress, in her wedding dress, and then took her out at downtown McKinney, town I lived in, and shot some photos of her, put it on a business card, and then put that ad in the back of the city. They have like a periodical that the city puts out, whatever, in Chamber of Commerce, forget what it's called. But I went and shot all their like dentist ads and stuff, and then they gave me a free spot in the back, right? So I that had been out. I got a call. Lady was like, "Hey, my photographer just bailed on me. I shared of a wedding and such, are you available?" And I was like, sure. And she's just like, well, how much? I was like, oh, I need to talk to my business partner, because I had never even considered what I would charge or anything. This came pretty quick. And so I hung up, and there was a guy that I was sort of starting my bit. He was a photographer before I got into it. And so we were he was helping me out. We were kind of doing it together, but he was busy. I was mostly my thing. Anyway, just talked about it. I was like, what do you think it'll be? I have to rent equipment and all this stuff. And so I just called her back. I was like, yeah, $2,500. She's like, sweet, done. And so that was a good amount of money for a wedding, I think, back in 2007. Yeah. That was a decent,
your very first one.
And I'd never done it before. So I went and I shot it, and she loved it. And that was it, man. I shot my own. I shot probably 6 or 7 weddings as a primary before I second shot. I second shot one with Kim Skiles. She's from FA down here in Dallas. They're incredible photojournal, like storytelling crew of photographers. Anyway, so I was really excited to learn about all the things I was doing wrong, right? Because I found this new thing I was doing. I wanted to be the best at it, right? The best in the world. And so best way is to learn from somebody who's really you respect. And so I went and I shot with her, and I came home and I was like, oh, so I'm doing all the same stuff. Like, apart from, particular things they might say or whatever. And again, this was a strict, they're a really strict, storytelling, photojournalistic, like they take it seriously, not, I was like, oh, I can do this. Like this is, I'm doing all of that same stuff. And it wasn't like I'm doing it as well as she is or anything along those lines. It was just, I was like, I saw myself. I was like, yeah, I do that same thing. Oh, I do that same thing. And I just approached it the way the first wedding, do what I think I should do, essentially, just basically shoot everything. I mean, always have been a bit of an overshooter. I think it stems from the fact that I'm so untrained that a lot of times I don't know what I'm looking at until I see it. Do you know what I mean? Like it's there, but I have to like take the photo first, and a lot of times I'm in a rush. And so I don't sit there and actually look for it. I'll just take it. Oh, there it is. And then I'll dial in or whatever. But look, that was what I was trying to get to. You're talking about the personal journey. I mean, all of that, it definitely, expanded out from past where I'm talking about, but going back to the idea that my house was such a social environment. That my kids, as they grew up, all of their friends hung out at our house all the time. It was an open door. That's the way my wife and I are like that personally. We're open doors. We're like that in our professional lives. We're just, that's the way we like to be. We like to connect with people.
This relationship kind of ending gave you the space to start to reinvent yourself and think like, I get to do this. I get to start with a new me. Like, and that started this personal journey over the last year. Precisely. Let me ask you a more practical question. Let me ask you a quick practical question. Because like what I hear you setting this whole thing up is like, you had anxiety, you had to reinvent yourself. What did that process look like? What did that process of changing over a course of 18 months, what did that look like for you? Did you make a list? Like, I want to be these things and go after it? Are you obviously, maybe you're not a list maker, but.
I make them. I need to write them down and then they get lost in my notes. But anyway, I am. But Yeah, I mean, this is the process, right? It's the process is at first, messing up and being the person that you're just responding to life naturally. And then you start realizing when you start impacting people that you love and your life starts getting worse and you start seeing it, and you're like, what's going on? I don't understand. And you start looking internally for ways that you can do better. I think Maya Angelou said it best, do the best you can and then till you know better and then do that. Like truly, I mean, words that I live by. Because I'm making mistakes all the time that I'm just unaware of. I'm offending people that I'm unaware of. I'm talking longer than I should be, and I don't realize it until I've been doing it for 10 minutes. These things happen to me all the time, and so I have to, in order to just stay, like, not hate myself. Like, I have to give myself the benefit of the doubt that I'm doing the best I can. And the only reason that works for me is because as soon as I realize I have a blind spot of somebody that I care about, or even somebody that I don't, if they feed something back to me and say, "Oh my gosh, that was so horrible," or whatever it may be, I trust my ability to honestly self-assess and say, well, let me consider that for a second. Oh my goodness, I didn't realize. I'm so sorry. I will genuinely apologize and make it up. I look at apologizing as an opportunity to have a relationship and a connection with a person that you didn't have prior, and that's what I want. So I have no problem doing that. It's something I learned. That's a part of I learned that in my marriage, and it really works. And so that just allows me the freedom to go through life without beating myself up too much. Although, yeah, I do lay in bed at night thinking about the conversation that I had 2 hours prior, and I'm just sitting there embarrassed. It happens. But and then. And so look, the whole story I think comes full circle here, and that was I was telling you this before we hopped on. Is I've been grinding for a little while here the last couple of months, and my head been down, and I hadn't been going out at all, and then I booked a wedding. I got a little bit of space, some money, and I was like, all right, I'm going to take the foot off the pedal. I'm going to go out. I'm going to just go out and just have some social and be around some people. So I went out and just did what I normally do. I went to the house place here, and I was dancing, and I wasn't enjoying myself, and it wasn't like I was having a bad time. I felt like I'd rather be somewhere else, but like I didn't really have anything else that I'd wanted to do particularly. And this is all, again, part of this long process of self-discovery. And so I took that very seriously because, the things that bring me enjoyment are incredibly important to me. They allow me to have the space to be creative, to approach relationships with kindness and empathy, because that sorts me. And so as I thought about it over the course of a weekend, I think it just really occurred to me that, like, well, this is the growth that I've been looking for. This is what I really wanted, was to be around people. And I was there alone, and there was nobody there that I knew, and I wasn't sharing the experience. And so I thought to myself, I would rather be at a concert for a band that I don't like, and be with a couple of people that I love, and be with my friends or my family. And that's what I want, more than just being at the place and doing the thing I want to do. And that may seem like a normal thing for most people. I don't know if it is, but for me, that's immense. I've never felt like that. I've always been, again, I came from a situation where I wanted to be alone all the time. And I thought it was, because I was this other thing. And it was because I wasn't able to really appreciate the people for who they were, or like that wasn't enough, whether it should have been or that's not the question. The question was simply the way I was approaching the relationships. I couldn't go. I had all these ideas in my head about, like, I wouldn't go to that concert because I don't like that band. I'm not going to enjoy myself, and I'll just be miserable. You guys don't want to be around me. So I just would not go. And that made sense to me. It was like that was me understanding who I am, and all these, and again, I had all these stories in my head to justify all these behaviors. But it occurred to me one day that I was like, you never even seen the band. You don't even know. Or do you know what I mean? Like, there's so many experiences that I would say no to that I just didn't like the idea of it. It wasn't the thing itself. It was just, it's something I don't know. And again, it became so clear how avoidant I was about all these things. And again, anxiety, and the fear of being a bump on a log and not being able to contribute, all these things. And then here I am now, just willing to sacrifice this thing that I love so much for the sake of just being in a totally different environment so that I could be around some people. And this is a product of being without it for a long time. I think, it shifted my priorities, and the way this all ties into the wedding industry, just to really bring it all the way full circle, I guess, um, is that, you know, I ran my business, my photography business, where creativity was the most important thing, right? It was the image was king. It was just, I genuinely wanted to be the best photographer in the world. That was always my approach. Every time I clicked the shutter, I can remember, like, I'll go through images that I took 15 years ago, and I'll be like, it brings me right back to it. I know where I was because I'm so keyed in and dialed in, and looking for the thing that I found, looking for that inspiration. And again, I was looking for the, you know, to be made happy, to be made like justified. Yes, you are a great photographer. You can do that. Whatever. I think, again, looking at it backwards, and then, you know, I think what happened, I did a couple of workshops, and, you know, Otto said this to me at one point, and this was like, I was struggling to get business, and it just, he was like, the only people that look at your work are the photographers, you know, like that, like it's not that, you know, you, like, your work is brilliant. It's not that it's not, it's just, because I was like, I don't understand why I'm not booking more, you know, weddings. And he was just like, you know, you're speaking to a very particular crowd with the work that you're doing. Anyway, in the end, it turns out brides don't really care how many awards you won, and neither do the people that book weddings, you know, that book you the weddings. It's really, you know, for me, that was all that mattered. And so I approached it that way, and I was successful. I won lots of awards, and I think I was looked at within the eyes of the people that I respect and admire as a peer, you know, and somebody who was doing singular work, you know, where you look at a picture and be like, Erik took that picture. And I just, that's all I ever wanted, man, was to, you know, and art's subjective. And so being the best in the world is something that, you know, I could just look at that and say, I put my work up against anybody's. Like, that's all. It doesn't matter whoever's judging. I'm comfortable comparing. You know what I mean? Like, I don't look at work and think. I do actually sometimes. Actually, now that I look at things a lot differently, I'll look at other work and go, oh, how do you see that when you walk in the room? And it'll be just like a regular image, but done so well, you know, in a way that, like, say, I would have done this really creative, artistic thing. And I respect so much. You're right. You're right at the top of this list, not for nothing, James, but your ability to just take a portrait of somebody, just a picture of somebody, and do it in a way that absolutely highlights not just them, how beautiful they are, their personality, but the environment that they're in. And, you know, as I've shifted from creativity to content, you know, like that being the most important thing, like, what's the content, like, what's happening, and showing it in a way that is meaningful to my clients. Interestingly, it's opened up this entire new avenue of creativity for me. Like, when I walked into a room prior, I was drawn to the thing that inspired me, the light, the this, the that, whatever. I'd walk into this room and shoot the same thing every time, essentially, because that's what I would go for. And now that I'm like, look, it's irrelevant what I think. What's important to you? And of course, this is, you know, many of Otto's and mine conversations, and a lot of this is, you know, a lot of our conversations has become this material that you guys teach, to be fair. You know, now I look at, and I'm like, ooh, and so I'm seeing just a picture now, and I'm like, oh, how will I do this and deliver that product still, that content? The content's important, and I'm working backwards from the content creatively. It's honestly, I feel like my work has gotten so much better and so much more. The scope has just widened, you know, and it's interesting because, again, I think this all ties into that personal approach of, you know, the first step is to look internally, because the way to be truly happy is to live from the inside out. You're never going to find contentment, happiness by making sure you're in the right room all the time, or controlling the environment, because it's impossible. You're not going to be able to do it. That the first step is going inside and being like, why do I respond to the environments the way that I do naturally? Because we all do it. We all just, I was taking a run earlier, and I was running, and this guy in a car had my headphones in, and he drives, and he got like within a foot of me. Like, he got real close. And I was like, geez, like this. And I got like angry. Do you know what I mean? And then I just kept running, and then I just thought to myself, I'm like, man, I'd love to be able to just be like, oh, you know, and like, hey man, no worries. I know you weren't, whatever. I'd love to be able to just approach it with equanimity, but I'm just like, man, I don't have a choice in the matter. That's what's happening. That happens to me. It's what I do with that, right? That determines the kind of person that I am. And I think that everybody sort of understands that. But I think it's realizing, and maybe we can and maybe we can't, but like we can work backwards, you know? Like I said, I could have that avatar and be like, hey, I want to not react when I'm compromised like that in some capacity. I'm fine with being scared. I think my body's just protecting me. But like, what do I do with that? Like the anger is something I have a choice in. Maybe it doesn't feel like it at the time, but that's something I can work on.
Do you think then, because what I hear you saying is in your personal life, the changes you've made in your business, all of these things come down to, and let me know if you agree
Sure.
with what I'm saying, has been your ability and your willingness to just self-reflect and actually look, because you said I have lots of blind spots. And literally what I hear you saying is I just decided I was going to start looking at those blind spots truthfully and honestly and going, okay, what can I do about one at a time? What can I do about this blind spot today?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
it is.
over the course of 18 months,
20 years, truly 20. It's been since, the marriage was the first. I'm real serious about that, man. Like the journey. That's why I mentioned that, the divorce at the beginning was sort of like a delineation mark, but this process began. Honestly, it began for me when I was 16, and I had a friend, and we would stay up late at night. We'd stay over and we would play video games, right? And play baseball. We played baseball video games, and this was before even fantasy baseball was a thing. But like I was always a real nerd, sports nerd, statistics nerd, and we would do like a draft, and I would pick my favorite player, and then he would pick his favorite player, and we would go down and we'd fill the lineup up, and then we would play the players, but like with the guys, and then we'd keep stats and the whole thing. Anyway, but this kid wasn't into sports as much as I was. And so when we were doing that draft, and by the way, we would record all of this. I would record us talking, and then we'd play it back later at like 2 times the speed, and we would just giggle because it would sound funny. Anyway, so this is what we would do. We just like do something where we would talk. And so that's sort of where the idea was, like, oh, let's do a draft and we can record ourselves doing it. Anyway. And so he would pick a player that was just like not the best player, right? Like I would pick the best player. I knew who all the best players were in order, right? And his player would be like just like his favorite shortstop guy that was like, somebody that was not whatever. And I got angry, and I was like, dude, come on, pick a real guy. Don't be an idiot or whatever. And we had this whole thing, and then I listened to it later, man, after he left, and I listened to myself talk to my friend. And I absolutely just broke down, and I was just horrified. I was horrified. I'd never thought of myself like that. That it never occurred to me that like I could do something wrong or make somebody feel bad. And to me, I was the victim of everything that went bad in the world to that point. And I saw myself as the oppressor. Of course, this is language that I'm putting on it, now. And right then, I began looking for it in my life. I had a bad capacity to find it. I wasn't very good at looking. I was coping all the time. But like, when given the opportunity, I never ran from it. I always wore it. I was like, oh my God. And, and honestly, I think, to a fault to some extent, you become think you're a terrible person. And then I cope with that. And how do I make myself not think I'm a terrible person? And I was for a long time. I was not a nice person, man. And I didn't know I wasn't. I thought I was a nice guy all the time. I had no clue, even, through my marriage, through my religion, all of these things. I really was just trying to be the best person in the room all the time. And as I look back, it's fascinating. It's fascinating and terrifying to see how much damage I was doing, just like constantly and just totally unaware of it. And that's a powerful, powerful thing, man, to initiate change, an honest ability to assess yourself. It activates all of my empathy and I put it on, and it's towards myself. It's towards the inner, like the person, but the person who, the little kid that just he's doing this. He doesn't know, you know what I mean? A lot of this flashy, all this stuff I talked about, I know exactly where it comes from. Junior high was rough for me. I was, prior to junior high, nobody cares. The fastest kid was the most popular kid, and I was always the fastest kid. I was really athletic, and I was smart, and I guess, I don't know, girls like me, whatever. But we were hitting each other on the playground and whatever. But then junior high happened. It seemed like everybody sort of got this message that I didn't get. Right? Everybody kind of knew each other, and there were all these new people, and they were dressing different, and I got head to toe acne, and I didn't know how to. I was wearing like white button-up shirts with white pants and like white shoes. I don't know. I just and so I got picked on, and so I just retreated into myself, and it became really important to me to be the coolest person in the world. Like, do you know what I mean? Like I said, I take things and I go all the way with it, but like being cool, just again, that little kid, he's just trying to be cool, man, and that trauma wasn't about that. You know what I mean? It was, the desire to be seen, to be understood, to be accepted, all these things. And so, yeah, man, I go out and I just want to be accepted. I want people to see me as cool, as, somebody they want to be around or whatever. But then when I get there and I get the opportunity, I just blow it. I don't know what the hell to do. And so it's like, yeah, I need a different approach. Do you know what I mean? Like I said, I think the ship has sailed with all of the flashiness, and that's fine. But like, yeah, it's like, I need a new approach. And then that's, really that's what the business has given me, really, is this opportunity to practice being this person that I want to be, to be my avatar, because, it's the idea that the best way to have a friend is to be a friend, like I used to hate networking. It was like it was so uncomfortable. Again, I have social anxiety. I would go to WIPA in Colorado and sit in the corner and not talk to anybody and then leave. What a waste of money and time. And like, I just was so terrified to just talk to anybody. And so like, I just felt like an imposter, and it wasn't because like, I'm not a good photographer and I don't belong there. It was more like, how do I need business. I need work. And it's like, how do I talk to this person and like pretend I don't need their business? And that's really all I care about. And then Otto said something to me one day. He goes, how about just not only caring about that? It's like, why don't you just like take an interest in the person? And, and it just had, it just never occurred to me. It had just never occurred to me. And I think, again, it's along the line. I was so focused on the fact that I don't like networking that I never even really thought about what it was or how to do it. I just was like, no, I don't like doing it because it makes me feel bad. And that's just it. That was the truth of the matter. And the real crux of the issue is that I trust what goes on in my brain. And that's a problem. Do you know what I mean? Like it gets me into a lot of trouble.
It's a problem for all of us, for sure.
I know. When you trust the voice, like I trust it implicitly. And I'm starting, and in that over this past 20 years, I've started to distrust it. And that left me really confused. Again, that was a big motivator for getting out of the marriage, because I was starting to dislike myself, and I was like, no, I can't give up that. I need that too much, And in the end, I realized that I had plenty of reasons to dislike myself. It was, again, just, I still have a lot of those things now, but I like myself a lot more now. I'm far more, I've dealt with a lot of those, the loneliness, and I've dealt with the frustrations and the anxiety and all these things, but none of them ever made me think I did the wrong thing. This was just what I was going to have to go through. Like, that's the only path to become the person that you want to be.
Let me ask you, is there, so I know there's listeners out there, myself included, and let's move this more towards the business side. But someone is going like, I know I have blind spots. I know I have growth to do in this business. I'm not booking the weddings that I want, or whatever it is. I just can't seem to open up enough to actually look at it. Do you have any insight after 20 years and then an intense 18 months of really self-reflecting? Like, what can I do to truly look at my business and say, like, okay, maybe, is it just a shift of perspective? Is it trying new things? Is it what insights do you have? How do I candidly and honestly look at areas of my personal life and business?
Yeah, well, I think it's everything that you mentioned, of course. I mean, it's look, you guys say this all the time. Mindset is the key. It's the key to everything. I think that there's a lot of ways to approach it. I think that the words, just radical honesty just come to mind for me in terms of just assessing ourselves, because, no matter what the business is like, no matter what situation it's at, this is, the first step is looking at like I said, going from the inside out. Even if you start booking all the weddings that you want to book, it's not going to make you happy if you're not happy now. It's just not. And that's, if you need it, then you're going to approach it in a capacity that limits your ability to get the most out of it. You're going to leave something behind, or you're going to miss something because you need it, right? We're coming at it from a deficient mindset. I need this room or this business or this job to be a particular thing in order for me to feel fulfilled. That's just outward in. It's never going to work, even if you get the thing. And so for me, it's really all about maximizing potential. And the surest way to maximize potential is to get rid of all of my hangups, to show up in the room without a need. I don't need anything here. That's when I was able to love my wife the best, to let her go. When I realized I didn't need her, I liked who I was. I'm okay. If she goes, I'm not going to be like this bereft. Like, I understand why she would leave me, and I understand why I would let her go. It made sense. And so then I was able to do it. And so yeah, I think and everybody has a different blind spots. That's the thing. The way I did it is not the way someone else is going to do it. But surely, but the concept of, honesty remains, however you approach it and however you can find your way to not excuse yourself, to not, your brain's going to pitch you ideas about why it's okay that you have the hang up that you do. It's really important to just let that come and let that go and not agree with it. Like, just because your brain pitches it to you doesn't make it so. And again, this is about not trusting learning what to trust, in my mind. And meditation has been a humongous part of it.
Yeah, that's where I'm going with this, though, because obviously we all have some level of pride, right? We all bump up against this thing of like, I know I've had 5 people tell me this thing, but they're wrong. Like, you can always find a way to explain it away.
Yeah.
And is it literally just a matter of are you saying it's just literally a matter of this radical honesty is like, no, when I get that feeling, I'm going to just push through it. And or is it like, I'm going to assume for today, I'm going to assume that I'm wrong.
I think so. Adam Grant wrote a book called Think Again. And he has, I think, a really good framework for this, that I've adopted. And he puts a job title to sort of the way we approach particular data or information feedback. You can think about it like a preacher. You can think about it like a lawyer. There's another one, I think. And then he's like, you can think about it like a scientist. And so, a preacher is all, like, I'm preaching, I'm telling you about the thing, and I'm I'm convincing you with emotion and with, storyline and all these sorts of things. And that's one way to, to communicate, and to engage a conversation. And then there's the lawyer who's, trying to convince you, through data points and whatnot. But then there's the scientist who if the more you understand about the science, and this is like the scientific method, not like a particular scientist, it's how do we arrive at rational conclusions about things. And science itself is naturally curious. It's always trying to prove itself wrong. That's how science progresses. I have this idea, if I can prove myself wrong, then I know that's not accurate. But if I can't, then I'm left with something solid, something substantial that I can work with. There's some sort of truth here. And of course, you find out more data and then you update, right? And so for me, the idea of approaching negative feedback like a scientist works, because you get the data and it's like, okay, let me test it. Let me test the data. Let me look at myself and the key word is curious. Be curious about it. Curiosity is the key really behind all of this. When you're curious, you're less apt to arrive at conclusions about things, because there's always something, because when you're curious, you're more aware of what you don't know, right? That's actually what your target is this thing you don't understand. And so you don't come into it with this Dunning-Kruger syndrome of, whatever, I know you don't know anything. And so your mindset is in that place. And so this is just sort of like a workaround where, maybe, if I can prompt myself, and the issue is, for me, is just prompting myself, realizing it. And a lot of times the prompt for me is negative feedback. It's difficult to prompt myself in that way when things are going well. So I think, maintaining a curious mind, a curious heart, asking instead of telling. These sorts of things are the surest way to to get there. And honestly, it's the way to, that's how I approach the calls with planners and whatnot is I'm here to find out about who you are, like I don't know. And every planner has a different way. You guys talk about providing value, and the only way I'll know how to provide any value is if you tell me what that is for you. And then, and then continuing that process, not just taking and being like, okay, this is this. It's again, whatever the takeaway is, or whatever conclusion I arrive at, always holding that loosely and realizing that this isn't the truth. This is just the best, given the information that I have to this current point. This is, you know what I mean? This is what this is, but it's always can be updated. Right. And I'm like this too. I know, again, back to the Maya Angelou quote, right? It's, this is the best I can do, but this is not an arrival. This is just what life has shown me to this point. And one thing about life, it's not going to turn off anytime soon. It's going to keep bringing stuff, that you can't see around the corner. I don't believe in good choices or bad choices. I just think there's choices, and then we just make the best of it because we don't have enough information to make good or bad choices. We don't know what's going to happen. You just again, do the best you can. Make the call. Just send the email. Even it's not going to be perfect. Jesus, of course not. Like you're going to figure it out. You're going to get feedback. You're going to learn how to do it. That was my biggest hang up. I know was just starting, just doing the thing. Just send the damn email. And I was, I'm grateful for Otto. Otto has been there, and I've told him this, so he doesn't need to be on the call for this. I tell him this all the time, that having his friendship throughout this process has been, it's difficult to, to even, put into words or to say how big it's been. But, there's been times when I'm like, I gotta do something else. I don't think this is working, whatever. And he's never, he believed in me when I didn't believe in myself, when I was at my lowest and I was just feeling all of those things that were coming. I was like, oh my God, I didn't know all these things about myself. And I was genuinely, at the bottom, that's where, and you guys are busy, man. Otto's busy, but he's always had time, for me. And, I know you mentioned earlier about how you wanted him to be on this call because of how special I am to him. And I know that. And I'm so grateful for him and for his friendship. And we've had, there's been different stages in our lives where we provided, that for each other. But I truly, Otto is a brother, and he, like I said, believing in he saw my potential in a way that I couldn't, because he had just done it, right? He had just walked this path. He had been there, and he's like, Erik, you can do all of this. I know you, and nobody knows me as well as Otto. Truly, we walked and had the conversations that are so intimate. You can't help but get to know somebody in a deep, close way. And again, we've shared a lot of these similar experiences in our lives, through our families and through our jobs and personal and a lot of these things. And so to have him say, no, stay, keep going, make the call, do more, you can do this, whatever, I'm the one doing all the work, and I have nobody to, in the end, it's me, I believe that ultimately, but this is just, again, this is the benefit of running a business like this. I'm creating new relationships with people that care about me. I'm being a better person around people. And so, I'm getting more out of the relationships, and I just, it's no small, I don't think it's any kind of a, coincidence that it's a relationship that's, gotten me to the point where, I actually have something to offer this industry.
Yeah. And kind of bring this thing full circle. I love that you talk about curiosity, because as I heard you in the beginning of this call, talk about how you got into photography and how everybody's had this, anyone who's a photographer, a videographer, whatever your industry might be, musician, at some point that little fire was lit in you, and you knew you didn't know. Right. And you just were curious, and you just started to learn. You just started to tell me, asking questions. You were curious about everything. What's an f-stop? which direction do I shoot? Oh, I shouldn't shoot with the sun behind me. I should shoot all these things. And then at some point you decide, hey, I know now. I know it. I know all the things. Well, but the reality is if you can
not quite yet, but enough anyway.
No, what I'm saying, but the reality is if you can keep curious, if you can keep having radical honesty with yourself, you're going to continue to grow. And it's when we stop doing that we stop growing because we think we know.
Exactly. No, exactly that. Exactly. And I'll say that, photography, I've always been a Renaissance man. Like I'm somebody, and Otto will tell you this, that, my one of the biggest problems I have is that things come easy to me. I pick something up and I can get it. If it's a sport, I'm very quickly, I'm good at it. With photography, very quickly, I was good at it. And when things don't come easily to me, again, now looking backwards at it, it's so obvious, the anxious avoidant thing that I got. But like, the fact that things come easy to me, like I'm like, oh, that's hard. I'm not going to do that. I don't like doing things that don't come easy to me. And with photography, it was the first thing that I'd ever engaged that I didn't lose interest in, that I didn't get tired of it, or there wasn't a day that I didn't want to do it. And I think that, and I'm just looking at this backwards now, as you mentioned that, and I think that has a lot to do with it. The other stuff that I would do, I needed to win in order to want to do it. Like I had to be good at it. Right. So it was, again, outwards in, right? Like this thing was providing me this sense of accomplishment or sense of worth. And then, but that's never going to last because the environment's going to shift. It's going to change. And so with photography, yeah, man, it was the thing itself, and again, because I wanted it for itself, not for what it made me feel, or not for anything that I got out of it. It was the thing itself that allowed me to continue to be curious, because I was like, ooh, this thing is so much bigger than me. Like, I don't know anything about this, and I really want to know about it, right? And then, and it was just, putting in 10,000 hours, like, doing it a lot. I think there's certainly a talent, and gifts are real, and that's a thing. But I mean, I genuinely think I could take anybody and teach them to be a pretty good photographer. Like, genuinely, I believe that.
And then, but there's always so much to learn, right? Like, oh, now I can shift to the business. Now I can shift to sales. I can shift to relationship building. I can shift. I mean, there's never enough to learn, right? Like that's what I hear you saying. Like, growth is continuous if you can stay curious, if you can be radically honest with yourself. Which is cool, because then you have no ceiling. It's unlimited potential.
Exactly. And that's exactly what I was going to say, just about to say, was that, I can get my business and max it out and get exactly the life that I want. For me, maxing out the business is not shooting 30 weddings a year at 100,000 a pop or anything crazy. It's, for me, I just want to make enough money to be able to live on the beach and have an easy life, and work. And then I want to live the life that I want to live with the people I want to live. I don't want to spend my life at the beck and call of my job and working 80% of my waking hours so that I can just pay bills and have things. I'm just not interested. And so maxing out the business for me may be a different level than someone else, but ultimately I'll get there quicker and I'll enjoy it more if I do it from the inside out. If I know what I want and if I approach it with a curious mindset, the people I'm going to be working with are different. The people I'm going to approach, I'm going to be inspired by different people, different situations. I'm going to look at things differently because I'm not looking for anything. The environment can speak for itself. And when it's speaking to a healthy person, you're going to pick up different stuff, and you're going to add to the environment in a much better, in a better way. And again, that doesn't stop when I leave work. I'm going to be meeting people that I'll know outside of work, through work maybe, but I'll become friends with them. Otto's a great example. We become lifelong friends. We don't know each other just in the capacity of wedding photography, for sure. And of course, our relationship has just expanded and gotten better as we've both grown as people, right? We used to we used to drive each other crazy. Good Lord, we used to get irritated with each other. But, being of similar mind, that kind of happens a lot of times. But we've seen each other grow so much. I'll get more out of my vacations. I'll get more out of the place that I'm at. All of that bleeds over, and there is no, like I said, there's no arrival date. It's just, that's it for the rest of my life. I want to see things in a new way as often as possible. I want to be the best version of myself on my deathbed. And, and that's it. The business is just, again, like I said, when I had the family, it gave me something to do. It gave me an environment to grow in. And that's all this is, it's an environment. And whatever environment I'm in, I'm going to try and maximize the potential of that environment. It could be just hanging out with a friend on, having a picnic, or it can be, shooting a wedding. It could be a call. It can be anything. I'm keenly aware, because of how much I've ingrained this process into my brain, of missteps that I'm making, things that I'm doing well, or at the very least, I'm tracking all of it. And I'd like to work towards that being more natural to me, where I don't have to actually put the emphasis on paying attention to it, that's my response to the environment. Back to what we were talking about earlier. I think that's, if I'm working towards anything acutely, I think that's where I'm trying to head to, where like I said, my responses to my environment are the avatar. I become that thing, right, that I want to be. And then the avatar changes. Things I want to do changes. You know what I mean? Like, again, there is no arrival date. We're always changing on a micro level, because of everything that we do, everything we engage with, every person, every conversation, everything we do changes us on a very, very subtle level, because that's what we are, is our experiences. Our brain's just pitching us a record of the past. That's it. You are this because I experienced that one time, right? And so I'm just participating in that process. I'm participating in it, and I think that's like that supercharges your experience, your life. That's sort of a participating, and not just letting life change you into whatever it's going to. You get to say.
I love it. I love all of it. Erik, thank you for being here. Thank you for giving us your time.